The sun baked the rust-colored walls of Utah's canyons. It was a labyrinth carved by time and indifference, a place where the silence wasn't empty, but heavy with the weight of ancient stone. This was the sanctuary of Aron Ralston, a man who sought communion with the wild, chasing adrenaline through the narrow slot of Blue John Canyon. He felt invincible, dancing across the slick rock, breathing the dry, mineral air. He was alone, and that, he believed, was his greatest strength. April 26, 2003. He was deep within the canyon's throat, descending into a crevice where light barely reached. There was a boulder, a suspended sentinel weighing perhaps 800 pounds, wedged precariously above him. It had waited millennia for this exact second. He reached for it, stabilizing his descent. And then, the earth moved. Not with a roar, but a sickening, grinding thud. The world inverted. The air rushed out of his lungs in a sharp gasp. A blinding, searing pain shot through his right arm, silencing the canyon completely. When the dust settled, Aron looked down. His forearm was gone, consumed by the shadow. A monolithic chokestone had rolled, pinning his limb against the cold, unyielding canyon wall. He pushed, he shoved, he cursed, he pleaded. The rock did not budge. It was an impossible weight, a casual monument to his immediate demise, placed precisely to negate all hope. The realization settled in, chilling him far deeper than the canyon air. He was trapped. He was utterly, completely alone, hours from the nearest soul, imprisoned by a geologic anchor in a place without sunlight or signal. The first 24 hours were a frenzy of pure animal panic. He used his free hand to chip away at the edges of the boulder, attempting to fracture the foundation of his prison. He used his rope, tying elaborate systems, trying to gain leverage against 800 pounds of solid quartz monzonite. Futility became his closest companion. Every frantic effort was met with the cold, immovable reality of his stone captor. The skin on his free shoulder was shredded, his muscles burning, but the boulder remained fixed, silent, and triumphant. The second dawn arrived, painting the sky a cruel, vibrant orange far above the narrow slit of the canyon. Hope, that persistent, mocking parasite, began to shrivel. His water supply, 1 liter, was rapidly diminishing. Thirst became the metronome of his waking moments. He recorded a brief message on his video camera, a strange, detached goodbye to a world he might never rejoin. He was fully aware now. This was not a challenge to be overcome, but a sentence to be endured. He was buried alive, not under earth, but under the indifference of geology. By the end of day 2, the physical struggle had given way to the mental siege. He had to ration the remaining drops of water like liquid gold. The pain in his arm had dulled, replaced by a terrifying numbness, a sign that the circulation was severed, and the limb was dying, transforming into dead weight attached to a still-living man. The canyon was closing in. Day 3 brought the terrible beauty of dehydration. His mind, starved of moisture, began to play cruel tricks. He saw phantom reflections of water on the canyon floor. He spoke to the rock, demanding its surrender, only to hear the echo of his own madness. He dreamt of ice cubes and rain, waking only to the crushing reality of the dryness in his throat and the cold, smooth granite pressing against his flesh. He was haunted by what he called the specter of the future. He knew the sequence of his death: dehydration, hypothermia during the ruthless Utah night, followed by slow, total organ failure. Day 4. He drank the last drops of his water, holding them on his tongue, savoring the momentary delusion of life. He lay there, shivering, calculating the precise moment his body would simply give up. He stared into the darkness, understanding that if he died here, no one would find him for months, perhaps years. His body would become another forgotten relic of the canyon. He started to accept death, to make peace with the stone. But then, in the deepest hour of the 5th night, 127 hours into his ordeal, a vision pierced the delirium. He saw himself, inexplicably, with only one arm, playing with his future son. It was a premonition so vivid, so absolute, that it broke the hold of despair. He realized the stone was not the executioner. It was merely the gatekeeper. The key lay with him. Sacrifice was the only currency accepted for freedom. Aron had studied anatomy years before. He knew the radial and ulnar bones in his forearm were the anchors. They had to be broken first. He looked at the tools he possessed. A cheap, multi-tool knife with a tiny, agonizingly dull 2-inch blade. A knife meant for opening cans, not carving flesh. He first attempted to saw through the skin and muscle below the trap. The blade dragged. It tore. It felt like attempting to cut through thick, cold leather with a butter knife. The screams he swallowed were silent, internal concussions of agony. After hours of futile hacking, he stopped. He was losing blood and gaining nothing but despair, only proving the tool was insufficient. He had to change the approach. The bones must be fractured, turning the rigid limb into something pliable, something he could manipulate. He shifted his body, bracing his shoulder against the boulder, positioning his trapped arm so that the full force of his desperate, dehydrated body could be brought to bear against its own structure. He forced his body to break its own integrity. First, the ulna snapped with a sickening, wet crack that echoed strangely in the dead air of the canyon. Then, the radius, resisting fiercely, gave way finally with a blinding spike of pure, white pain, sending him reeling into a moment of nausea and shock. The arm was now a mangled piece of meat, held together only by tissue, tendon, and nerve. It was now flexible enough to rotate, exposing the flesh where he needed to cut. Now the terrible blade had purchase. He began the final, surgical cut. He had to cut below the tourniquet he had secured, a horrifying race against blood loss and unconsciousness. The nerves screamed like ripped wires, sending electrical shocks through his entire system. He cut through the tendon and muscle fiber, layer by agonizing layer, focused and cold in his purpose, fueled by the vision of that future life. The tendons were like steel cables. He strained, fighting the stickiness of the blood and the dullness of the blade. He could hear the scraping sound, the wet sound, the sound of his life being violently separated from its appendage. When the final tendon parted, the silence returned. A dreadful, bloody freedom. Aron Ralston pulled his stump free of the rock's embrace. He was bleeding profusely, weak, disoriented, but he was free. The clock had stopped. 127 hours were over. He quickly applied his makeshift tourniquet and began the desperate 6-mile crawl out of the canyon, leaving his arm behind, a macabre offering to the wilderness. Hours later, staggering through the blinding sunlight, on the brink of collapse, he found salvation, a Dutch family hiking nearby, whose disbelief turned to urgent, panicked assistance. The true story of 127 hours is not about a man being pinned by a rock. It is about the monstrous price of survival. It is the story of how much a human being is willing to surrender, how far they are willing to descend into the horrific, to earn one more sunrise. He paid in flesh, purchasing his life back from the canyon, one terrifying cut at a time. He chose the pain of life over the comfort of death. And that choice, above all else, remains one of the most chillingly inspiring tales of human will ever recorded.